Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina, and all the way down south in Clearwater, Florida, is my good friend, fellow mastermind member. We've known each other for a long, long time now, Mr. Randy Lawrence. What's going on, buddy?
All right, my brother. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing excellent. It's great to see you, too. I'm really excited to have you on here. I know, man, you got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm excited to be able to hear about it and share it with our audience and find out exactly what you got going on. So why don't you start out and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been doing real estate now for 15 years. We started off in 2003. Started off, my original mentors were in multifamily. They had, several thousand units here in Florida. And so started off doing small multifamilies, and then kind of got the flipping bug, if you will, in probably 2004 or 5. Just Florida was so crazy hot with, the flipping going on. And also the money was a lot faster in that arena. So we really got focused on that. And then, flipped a ton of houses. Of course, the market crashed in 2008. We transitioned to a big short sale company, did hundreds of short sales, and then started back really flipping again, probably 2012, and then from there, probably about 15, started back looking, hey, we really want to get back to our roots of the multifamily and start focusing on larger complexes. And so really started probably in the last year and a half, 2 years ago, going back and pursuing that direction. And so now we're simultaneously, we've got the flipping company going where we're flipping probably, 60, 75 houses a year. And then the equity company where we're buying larger apartment complexes, like 75 to 400 unit apartment complexes. And again, not flipping those, but rehabbing, doing the value add improvement, improving the neighborhood for the tenants, improving and bringing rents up, right, and, bringing a great return for us and our investors. So it's exciting, man.
That is awesome, man. That's awesome. And one important thing I think we ought to point out is you pastored a church for what, about 20 years?
20 years, yeah. So during that whole time, I did two things simultaneously. That in the real estate, which we just talked about, and then also pastored a church. I was a pastor for international ministry and singles ministry at a large 6,000 member megachurch here in this area. And then back in 2006, we left out from there and went north of Tampa and launched a church called True Life Center, and pastored that church for probably 10 years. And then about 2 years ago, transitioned out from the lead role of that church and started the podcast and online focus called The Real Estate Preacher. And so that church merged together with another church, and another pastor took that over. And so now we're kind of casting a wider net through real estate. We're helping people, with kind of spiritual, mental, and strategic tools through the Real Estate Preacher podcast.
Man, I love that. Love that. Great podcast, great concept. Anybody can go out there and learn the mechanics of real estate, right?
Yeah.
But especially starting out and even growing, you've got to have that support system. You got to have that, be around like-minded people, and also be able to keep your sanity and to grow and to try to do the right things. And there comes a point when it's not just about how many houses you can flip in a year or how many units you can buy. You want to be able to give back, right?
For sure. And, I think that one of the keys for me has been that support, that spiritual base, that really with God's help, enabling me to do both of those things. Even during like the market crash, going through that plus pastoring a church and then having the right mindset, because it's like not only when you're facing those challenges, but when you're expanding, it's like doubt, fear, uncertainty can kind of try to creep in and rob you of taking those steps. And then even just being in the comfort zone, everybody loves to be comfortable.
Right.
And you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable to advance forward, whether it's somebody that's listening and they're starting off, like maybe they have a job and they're going to start flipping. Well, that's uncomfortable. You got to pull the trigger and buy that first house for 50 or 100 grand and take the risk and, balls in and go in and do it, and like, that's like, wow, that's uncomfortable. And so, again, for me, it's like that continuous development of the mindset. And even now, like, in an honest way, I have to do that on a daily basis. Because like, even now, like this morning, I'm doing some reading. I'm looking out over the water as I'm, drinking my coffee and getting ready to come into the office. And as I'm reading in the Numbers about the spies of Israel went in to spy out the land. And it's like this beautiful land, but all these fearful things. And for me, that just spoke to me. It's like, we've got two apartment complexes. One is 264 units. The other is 406 units that we're working on. And that's a bigger level purchase than some of the other ones we've worked with. At the same time, that's where I've got to level up in my mind. It's like, you know what? Put the hammer down and go for it. Right. And so I think that no matter what stage you're at, if you're just starting out or you're growing or increasing, you got to have that mindset focused on the right things.
That is so, so important. And, business, just like life, has seasons, right?
Yeah.
And, talk about seasons in the Bible is, and I remember Jim Rohn used to talk about that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Life is like the seasons, right?
Yeah.
And I'm reading a book right now called Necessary Endings, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you mentioned a word a minute ago, transition. You had to transition. When the market fell out, you had to transition.
Yeah.
You started a short sale business. So talk a little bit about that, about seasons of business and having to make transitions when the market changes, because you're really, really good at that. You saw an opportunity. You didn't look at, the market's tanked, I got to get out of business. No, you transitioned into another business and not only survived, but took advantage of that situation. So speak a little bit to that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. That, the things change in the business and the economy. And so often people get so focused. And again, I think it goes back to comfortable. It's like, hey, I learned this, I'm doing this, I stay focused and just doing this. And then, when things change, that's where it hits them and they're not willing to make that change. And so a lot of people, just like you said, they just, I am not going to make it, it's not working. They just left the business and came back in, 12 or 13 when things were, quote, better.
Right.
And so, I think what you have to do is you have to look at and come to honest terms is like, you're never one and done, meaning like, I've got this figured out and that's what I'm going to keep doing till I retire at 55 or whatever. It's like, you've always got to be making those adjustments and or those transitions as the market's changing. And then even the better component of that is beginning to be more strategic, so that I'm beginning to look ahead to see where the market's going and getting prepared for that. So as that happened in like 2008, the market's crashing, all these houses are going underwater where I'm at here in Florida. And it's like, I looked at that and it's like, look, I don't want to, we were still flipping, but it was like catching a falling knife. You go to sell the house at 100,000, the neighborhood's now 95,
right.
And it's like, I want to go with the tide. And so that was really, there is this tsunami of foreclosures coming. How can I ride that wave? I can help all these people to help them get out from underneath their mortgage. And so that was kind of the focus that we did. And so we really developed that as a full-scale business with, short sale negotiators and, managers and going through that process. And then as that, kind of crested out, we saw the market changing again. And then so we started selectively rehabbing because we had rehab crews and we stopped rehabbing everything in probably 2009-10 because of the short sale focus. And again, as the market transitioned, we made that transition to start, cherry picking, I guess, if you will,
right.
The ones that really needed to be rehabbed that made the most sense. And then so from 12 to 14, again, selectively rehabbing and increasing that back into a rehab model, recognizing, hey, these short sales are dissipating and moving away. And then so probably from 13 to 14, we bought a lot of foreclosures. But again, recognizing there's people out there now that are scratching at the dirt trying to buy foreclosures off MLS and they're gone.
Right.
And they didn't see that coming. And so where, again, we looked at that transition back in probably 14. And again, I believe God's help and having good people around us as well, being a part of a mastermind with other collective people that are thinking high-level thoughts, started focusing on the seller direct and going to a seller direct model, so that then that way, by the time everything dried up in the foreclosure stuff, we're already at scale in the seller direct model. So it really has been the biggest part of that, I think, goes back to the comfort zone thing. Like, in an honest way, I would have liked to had everything nailed down and not ever had to make a change.
Right.
But that's not real life.
That's true.
And so I think that, the days where somebody could learn one thing and stick with it and ride that horse all the way to the end to retire with the millions of dollars and ride off into the sunset, those days are gone. The economy changes too quickly. Technology moves too quickly. Seasons move too quickly, and, what's working today is not necessarily going to be 100% of what's working 18 months from now.
That's so true. And in fact, I'm really glad you brought that up about the transition and understanding where the market's going. Like you mentioned, the MLS stuff dried up.
Yeah.
Literally until about 6 or 8 months ago, I was getting all my deals off of HUD and the MLS, right?
Wow.
I mean, you had to stop. You're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
You had to stop in 2014?
Yeah, 15, they started just disappearing, you know what I mean? Like, it was.
Right. Well, I was getting all my deals until 2008. Now, we're still getting, probably a few HUD deals a month and maybe 1 or 2 MLS. But we had to start doing direct mail, Facebook, those type of things. Well, what are you doing now to generate your leads for your single family?
Yeah, on the single family side, we do direct mail, and we're probably at 30,000 pieces a month.
Right.
And then we've got a pretty extensive network as well, just because of our time frame here.
Right.
So kind of the old school, networking and reaching out to people and reaching out to other wholesalers as well. I mean, we wholesale properties, but we buy from other wholesalers as well, too.
Right.
And then we're beginning also to do outbound calling, and so just really all the things. One of the things that we actually are going to start doing back again is bandit signs. Bandit signs are effective. They're just a little bit more labor intensive.
Right.
So, but that's, and again, not being, I guess, lazy of just doing the one thing, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
If it's working, hey, let's just stick with it kind of thing. And it's like, well, yes, but doing multiple things, multiple streams.
And you have to. I've always said I'd rather have 10 ways to find one house than one way to have to find 10.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure.
So
and
what does your team look like?
So we have a project manager that oversees all of the rehabs,
Right.
and we probably have anywhere from 7 to 8 construction teams going at any given time.
That's
and then we have acquisitions guy. We have a closing manager, operations, where she's overseeing all the closings. Then accounting manager, where she's overseeing just all the bookkeeping and accounting and stuff like that. We're right now in the interview process for another admin person,
mm-hmm.
and then we're actively looking for a COO person as well, because then again, once that person's hired, we're going to bring on additional acquisitions people as well. So, but even too with us, and then also having the apartment complex company as well. I manage each of those people, and they oversee their area of responsibility. But that's where now bringing in that COO will help expand both businesses, really, because then they're going to be dedicated solely to operations and management.
Right. That's great. That is good. So it sounds like you're running pretty lean based on how much you're doing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've probably been historically more like the Sam Walton kind of deal. Of they still have the old office building in Bentonville, Arkansas, even though they're this giant global company. And, so I had been historically more of a lean, kind of push it to the limits. And so these additional hires we're doing, kind of will expand the bandwidth. And I think that you probably, I could have probably run faster, further if I'd not been as lean. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, but that's just kind of where I've been in my mindset,
Well, that's not a bad thing to do, is to stay lean.
No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of fat on the bone in the operations here, for sure.
That's really good. So
Yeah.
you mentioned multifamily a minute ago.
Yeah.
Tell us about that business. Tell us about your multifamily business, because
Yeah,
you really
so-
started it before the fix and flip, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. We had been in the smaller multifamilies, 7, 10 units, that kind of thing. Those were more easily acquirable at the time, again, where we were at. But as we transitioned back to focusing on that, really, the decision was, we don't want to go back in the smaller multifamily. We want to move to the larger multifamily, like the mentors I had, and then another neighbor and friend of mine on the beach has done a ton in that arena as well. And so we really said, you know what, the economies of scale for that threshold is about 75 units up to, 400 or 500 units. And so that's really been our focus. And so we closed 84 unit at the end of 17. We've been working on a bunch of deals this year. It's a very tight and competitive space right now, because just everybody and their brother's pushing after multifamily. And so that's
Right.
driven prices up, and, makes it, all the more important to make sure the underwriting is correctly. So we've got probably 3 deals that we're working on right now, 2 of them that are the larger complexes. And then kind of the bread and butter is the 75 to 130 units. That's really kind of our sweet spot, if you will.
Right. 75 to 130 units.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, and tell us a little bit about what your team looks like on that side, because you got to have somebody out there pounding the pavement all the time to find those deals. Because, like you said, everybody wants to be a multifamily investor right now.
For sure. Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody wants the cash flow from it. So, but it really is a team sport, if you will, a team business. So we've got our management company that we work with. They've been, of course, 30 years in the business, very seasoned, really super dialed in. And they're invaluable to have because of, one, you've got to know how to operate a complex once you get it.
Right.
And also being able to underwrite the numbers, because a lot of times you'll look at numbers and the numbers that are given to you are kind of crap. You know what I mean? Like they're not real. It's like I've seen stuff like even in your neck of the woods there in South Carolina where, they're saying, okay, on a 150 unit complex, the salaries to run it is $60,000. It's like, good Lord, that's half of what it's going to take to really run it, correctly.
Right.
And but with that management company, we've got the boots on the ground, manager that oversees things. We're able to have them go look at a complex for us when we, get one that comes in. We're able to work the numbers. It looks like it's going to be reasonable. They'll do a first tour of the property, check out the neighborhood, that kind of thing. So it's important to have that type of operation. Also, the due diligence company that we work with, we have that in place so that, again, once we get it under contract, you've got to walk, every unit, check every, up, down, all around for the whole building, all the roofs, all the ACs, all the interiors of every unit. Somebody asked me that. It's like, do you walk every unit? Absolutely, we walk every unit.
Right.
We don't just look at the 3 that we've seen on the tour. Once we've got it under contract, we're going to walk every single unit to see what that condition is, because we need to evaluate what's our real cost going to be to rehab this thing and bring it up to, best standards. So that due diligence team is in place. And then the lender that you work with is key too. And so we've got a couple of really great spot on lenders because, there's a number of different ways to approach it, whether it's a bridge loan on a deal that's not at the occupancy you need to get a Fannie or Freddie loan.
Right.
And then the other part of it is, with the Fannie Freddie, we have now that Fannie Freddie card because of having done deals. But if you've never done a deal and you've never gotten a loan from Fannie or Freddie, you need to have that relationship with somebody who can come on and sponsor with you. And so, of course, we develop that relationship with numerous other people in the beginning as well.
Right. So basically what you're talking about on the lending side, if you haven't done a multifamily, you need a key principal to go
That's right.
in and sponsor your deal. So they're basically signing on the dotted line.
For sure. Yeah, it is. And so the loans with them, of course, are in most instances they're non-recourse loans, but you do have to give a personal guarantee for that on a bad boy carve out. So again, it's still non-recourse, but if you were just trying to defraud them, then that comes back against the guarantor. And the other part of that is you really also have to have the net worth. So if you're borrowing $3 million on an apartment complex, you've got to have a net worth of $3 million, or your key principals have to have a net worth of $3 million because they want to see, hey, we're going to loan you the $3 million, let it stand against this complex. It's non-recourse, but we want to see that you've got at least a $3 million net worth and some liquidity. They want to see that you've got like a year's interest as well. So that's where, we had that, but we didn't have the Fannie Freddie card, so to speak. Right. And so, but again, having to connect with the right people to develop those relationships, that's why it's a team sport, because even now, once we go to buy a place, whether it's a $3 million, $5 million, or $15 million purchase, it still requires other people to be involved, different from the houses.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So tell us a little bit about the management company. You mentioned your management company. They have 30 years experience. And they'll go out and do the first site visit for you. Man, that management company is really a very key role in a successful multifamily project, right?
Absolutely. It's super huge. I mean, that if you don't have the right management and operations, it's going to be a mess, and that's where, there's two components, I would say, to that multifamily is one is the acquisition part. You've got to buy it right, make sure the numbers are correct, have the rehab accurate for what you're going to do. That's the first part. But then the second part, and it is equally as critical, is the management and the ongoing operations. I mean, you really have to be able to have professional operations so that you can minimize cost, maximize the rents, and also maximize the efficiency. And so when we targeted particular areas throughout the Southeast that we were focusing in on, we developed relationships with different people that were experienced, and then connected with other owners, and then found out from them, hey, who are, 3 managers that you could recommend to us? And then so we went through a vetting process by speaking to other owners on, hey, who do you recommend? And they're like, yeah, I worked with this person and it was total crap. I've worked with this company and it's been fantastic. And so through that, we kind of, whittled out the bad and went straight to the good, versus somebody just kind of looking on Google, management company, and pick this guy. And then you get, ends up costing you 50 grand in heartache and headaches.
That's so true. That's so true. And I'm glad you shared that about how you found them, because that was my next question. How did you find your management company? But you want to be able to ask owners, to recommend some, and then you put them through a vetting process as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, the reality is on that first go round, when we were moving into an area that we had not been before, it required a lot of work. I mean, anything successful that you do is going to require work.
Right.
And in the culture that we live in today, people don't want that, right? Yeah. They want easy, microwave success, right? Bing, 10 seconds. Woo, yeah.
Wow.
It's like,
I like that term.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
the
so
microwave
true.
Success.
It's so true.
That's what it is. And, I remember specifically sitting at this very desk, talking to people on the phone and thinking to myself, man, this is a buttload of work, but it's worth it, right? As I'm digging through and peeling back layers to find the gold and to find the right people that are going to ultimately be part of my team.
Right.
And, and so now, like, the result of that on probably 2 of the last complexes, and then this 400 unit deal that we've looked at in most recent terms, it's been a matter of making a call, talking to the owner of our management team, and then speaking with him, one of the team members goes out, looks at it. I mean, that's worth every bit of blood, sweat, and tears that I put into it, because having the right people on your team makes all the difference in the world.
That's so true. I even know some multifamily owners that will give their management company a small piece of the deal just to keep them vested.
Yeah, for sure. And that is part of the model with some of those folks, and we have not done that, but I'm not to say that doesn't have its place and or couldn't be a good option. I know guys that have done it and it's been very successful. And we're looking at that, because the other thing too is not every company necessarily covers every area and has expertise in that area.
Right.
So again, for us, we've expanded our geographic focus and footprint just because, that's part of the nature of what's going on in the marketplace. And so with that, we've also expanded where we've got, probably 2 or 3 go-to management companies that are exactly like I described. They are on point. They've got their systems dialed in. They're at the top of their game, and they're on board with us. And so, because they recognize, look, we're not kind of screwing around with it. We're in it for the long term. And as soon as we get something in their area, we're focusing on expanding that area. And so, again, that's how they make their money, is managing more and more doors for a longer period of time.
Right. That's so important. You mentioned a minute ago also, you have a due diligence company. Tell us a little bit about that, and what all do they do for you when you get a property, under contract?
Yeah, so it's good to have that. So, because a lot of times your management company has the ability to do the due diligence with you, and they'll do that as taking over the project, because again, you're coming in, oftentimes you're going to replace that current management with your management. You may keep the person that's the boots on the ground manager of the complex if they're good. If they're not good, you keep them on during the transition, and maybe second month in, you replace them. But so sometimes we've gone into projects that we've looked at, and then the management company's doing a good job. They're just constrained by the owner not wanting to spend any money. The owner's just milking it for, the cash flow.
Especially the last 3 months that it's on the market.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and again, so we're looking at one in Texas that, again, they bought it as a cheap cash flow play. So they bought it and they haven't put any money in it. They've got great management company, but also explicit instructions, don't spend any money. So you can't make the improvements. So in a situation like that, we don't want to use that management company to do the due diligence, because there's a heavy conflict of interest.
Sure.
And so that's where we bring in our due diligence company to actually do the lease audits to make sure that the leases are true and accurate against the rent roll, do the actual facilities walk where we look at all of the roofs and, foundations and all the units, and then put together a detailed report on it. So that kind of project probably can cost anywhere from, $2,500 to $5,000 to do that, because, you're bringing in 1 or 2 people. They're spending 2 or 3 days there, depending on the size of the complex. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it, because then now you've got, all right, hey, here's this, the electric's bad, this is bad, the sewer lines are bad. You've got all this information that you can now go back to the seller and say, look, hey, there's at least another $50,000 worth of work here that's got to be done that was not, 1, disclosed to us. Maybe you didn't know about it.
Right.
But 2, it wasn't visible. Now we know about it. Let's talk about it. Right. So even though you might spend $5,000, maybe you uncover a $50,000 problem, and then that becomes off of the price. So you spend $5,000 to make $50,000. That's pretty smart.
That sounds like $5,000 is very inexpensive to go do that much due diligence.
For sure. Yeah. It's a good deal. It's worth it, And so I think that what happens is when people are moving into multifamily, you've just got to recognize that you're dealing with bigger numbers. You know what I mean? So again, people will go to a house inspection and pay $200. Well, it's like, that's not going to be what you're going to get in that multifamily space. But at the same time, you're also spending $5 million, not $50,000 on buying the place.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about finding deals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everybody's chasing multifamily right now, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't
For
say
sure.
everybody, but that sounds
Well,
like something a 4-year-old would say. But
yeah,
there's a
but
lot
there's
of
a lot.
people.
It seems like everybody.
I know, right? So give us some tips and strategies on finding multifamily.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the surest way is to begin developing your network. And again, that's part of that team, like that we talked about
Right.
of who's on my team. The other integral part of that team is brokers in the specific area of where you're going to focus on. I mean, like I would say the best thing to do is focus on a particular geographic area that you want to be in,
Right.
understand that area, and then begin to network and connect with legitimate brokers, because probably the majority of the complexes are owned by more sophisticated individuals or companies like us, or, even guys I connected together with in that beginning.
Right.
They own 15, 20, 25, 30 complexes. These guys are professionals. And so most of those people recognize in this marketplace, they're going to sell to maximize their value through a broker.
Right.
And not just kind of, sell it to anybody off of the street. And so by developing those relationships with the brokers that you are a multifamily purchaser, you've got the means and the wherewithal, you begin to develop that relationship, they now begin to include you in that process of like, hey, I've got a deal that I want you to take a look at. I mean, a prime example of that, we had a deal in Georgia that the people offered on it. They were kind of a high flyer, no money group. It fell apart. The guy talked to some of his, team. Hey, who is somebody that's situated for this kind of property? And then boom, our company, Prosperity Capital, came up. He reached out to me. Hey, I talked with so-and-so. They said that you buy in this kind of thing, and boom, brought it to us as an off-market deal. We were going to buy it, but we got snaked out in the very end by another group, which that kind of sucked. But, that's part of that development of those relationships. And then especially once you close on properties, then people recognize you are a performer, and then it starts to compound even more. I mean, like right now, we're hiring another admin person because our internal CPA lady, she's going to also be moved into deal analysis because we've got so many deals that are coming to us. We need more help underwriting them, to vet through the properties. And so it is absolutely a great strategy to work that. The other element that we're going to do is specific targeting to send out, particular mailings to owners that we want to target for a particular area. I know guys that are doing that. It's been less fruitful than what you'd have in like kind of the single family space, because again, it's a more sophisticated seller. Like in an honest way, when we would go to sell our place, I'm not going to sell our complexes to somebody off a letter, because by going to a broader market, I'll bring in more money.
Right.
But again, it doesn't mean that those opportunities aren't there. It's just a little bit, I'd say, of a longer run, because you've got to target those people that maybe have owned them for 10 plus years, that they are ready to sell based on age. There's a little bit more work I think you have to put into it in doing the research before you just, boom, buy a list from, Real List and boom, mail it,
Right. So what you're saying is probably the biggest bang for your buck is to build relationships with brokers and be their go-to person.
Absolutely.
Before the property goes on LoopNet, which is, where they go when they don't sell.
For sure. Yeah, exactly right. Because that's exactly that. Once you develop those relationships, you'll be a part of the group that they reach out to. Now, again, there may be 30, 40, 50 people that are in that marketplace that they say, hey, we've got this property. We want to reach out to you. And in some instances, when you develop those relationships further, maybe that number whittles down to 3 to 5. You know what I mean? Like they're going to get their 3 to 5 best people, say, here's this deal. Because again, at the same time, there's a number like this deal we're looking at in Georgia. The guy wants $6 million. The broker's like, dude, you're not going to get $6 million. It's more like 5.5 to 5.8.
Right.
The guy's like, okay, I could live with that. And so, they're reaching out to us and probably, a handful of other people to say, hey, here's where it is, here's the number. And then if they can't get the number that they want, then they'll put it out into a broader sphere like that.
Right. That's good. That is good. Now, you do some, I think a lot of your deals are probably around 4 to 7 year plays where you're going to go in and either rehab the property to a certain extent, or you're going to improve the management, reduce expenses, increase the rents, that sort of thing. And so tell us a little bit about how you structure your deals, because you bring in some investors from time to time, right?
Yeah, correct. So we do, depending on how much the equity piece is, we'll have other investors participate with us in the complex and in the purchase. And then it really usually exists on that time frame of between 4 to 6 years, because in that first year, we're going in right out of the gate and, doing the exterior rehab, getting rid of some of the lesser quality tenants. Probably by month 6 to 8, we've made those changes. We're renovating units. It probably takes a solid 18 to 24 months to go through and do the renovations on the turn, because we're not just putting everybody out. We're selectively getting rid of the worst tenants, the slow paying tenants, the problem tenants, and keeping the good people, and then improving the tenant profile. So by year 24 months, year 2, we've got all the renovations are done. The tenant base has been improved. Now you're, significantly improving operations as well through that time period, so that come year 4 or 5, you've really got a great complex that's been totally transformed, better quality tenants, better quality of life, higher income, higher value, and now the ability to sell that. So, and that's where, again, that way the investors that participate with us, they're getting paid on a quarterly basis through the cash flow. And then there's additional monies of profit coming to them when we sell in year 4, 5, or 6. Now, there's occasional deals like the one that we're working right now in Texas that's kind of actively going back and forth, where it is one where we'll do a bridge loan because of the renovations that we're doing and some of the other vacancies with the property, that kind of thing, and deferred maintenance, where on that kind of deal, investors will come in with us, but we'll actually have that project done within about 24 months, be able to refinance out the project, pay them off. So they're getting paid off in a more 24 to 2.5 year time frame there. So that also happens, just depending on the nature of the acquisition and what it looks like.
Right. Good, man. That's really good. This has been some awesome information.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to connect together with you, brother, and look forward to having you on the Real Estate Preacher as well, man.
Awesome. That's good. Tell us a little bit about that podcast.
Yeah, so we have really started focusing on that. I mean, again, it delivers a spiritual component, a mindset component, and then a mechanics component, from doing mailings to marketing to how to answer seller calls to, we're actually going to start a series now on the apartment complexes. We really haven't talked about that as much as it's been single family. Right. And so we're starting to focus on that about how we've built out our multifamily business, how we, work with other investors, raise money, all that stuff. So, and then, we are getting more diligent about doing the regular episodes. We've been like on the top page of, iTunes or whatever with it. But some of the other focuses have kind of pulled my focus away. And it's like God's kind of saying, hey, we get people that reach out, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate the help. And, they've learned from it. So it's been a little bit neglected on my part. And so we're honestly putting more focus back on it because it's really delivering value to help somebody. I had a guy that they probably flip 100 houses a year. He reached out to me and he's like, man, dude, I love the podcast. The stuff that you've shared has just really helped change my mindset and helped take me to another level. And, man, keep doing the show. And, so that kind of thing is really cool to hear that response. Right. And, that's an opportunity to give back and help other people too.
That is great, man. That's great. So, Randy, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how can we help you? How can they help you? And how would they reach you?
Reach out to us through our website, prosperitycapitalpartners.net. You can go to prosperitycapitalpartners.net, and then it talks about our company. It's got a contact us form, and you can find out about if you want to invest with us in apartment complex deals, you can reach out through that mechanism, and love to be able to talk with you and be of value to help you.
Yeah, I'm going to the site right now.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. Man, I really, really appreciate you being on today. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely,
really, really
brother.
Informative. And, man, just keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. Appreciate you, and you keep rocking it out there and helping all the folks that you're helping too, brother.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. You take care.
All right, man. Take care, brother. Have a great day.
All right, you too.